welcome everybody back to the LJL OU. Middlecott and Temporal have taken a little bit of break. I'm Midnight, joined by Nymera for our third game of the day. And day, night, whatever time zone you're in, doesn't really matter. And this third game should be an interesting one. I'm not going to say banger yet, but it should be a pretty good one, Nymera, as we're
No,
taking a look
maybe not the word. It's a banger that I get to
at it.
stand up. This is going to be a really strange experience. I've actually never cast standing up before. Sadly, I have cast
Oh, that's
Burning
great.
Core in recent weeks when they've looked not very good. And when we were deciding on our schedules this week, thinking, okay, who's casting what, there was a discussion between Mass Swan and I thinking about who's going to cast DFM and who's going to cast Burning Core. And decided, you know what, I can't leave you, Midnight. I can't leave you to deal with this alone. So we're back at it again. And in some ways, I'm looking forward to it because at this point, Burning Core, there is no pressure on them. Rascal Jester on the other side, of course, they lost to DFM last week in that crazy game with Alistair engages galore. If Rascal Jester don't look confident in this match, how the hell are they going to look confident against DFM, locked Juggernaut match, and a potential tiebreaker too?
You would hope coming into this, because obviously looking at this game, Burning Core, Rascal Jester, it's on paper, it's very academic who should, I should say, win this particular game. Rascal Jester are going to be just the straight up favorites. Burning Core have very much, I think, struggled is an understatement for them coming into this, but in their situation, the Burning Core, it is merely look, you're not making it out, like you're not hitting finals. It's just not going to happen, and the pressure is off for them, which could raise. Is Burning Core just going to do something crazy? Like, is this where we just start seeing like lane swaps? You put Yuhi in the top lane just to see how he goes, kind of cheese.
Funny you mentioned that. I actually have heard some whispers of a Aphelios top into stuff like Fiora.
Oh no!
I'm not sure how likely that is. I feel like if we were going to see something crazy, it should have happened way back at this point when we were sat at the Sengoku 1 and 7. And sadly, we did see something crazy in that game, but in the very worst of ways that we could have imagined at that point. Are we going to go right through the bottom of the barrel into Bedrock and see if there's any crazy picks left down there? I don't know at this point. And I guess kind of pivoting off of that point, have we really seen anything to be happy with from Burning Core this split? It's kind of a bit of a touch and go answer. I think that Yuhi, even in spring, had some decent games hanging around the place. In the first and second weeks, we saw him on his Zaya do some decent work. Not really been the case for individual members of Burning Core to really stand up and be counted for. This time on the other side, the Rascal Jesters individually, it's one of the only teams in this league which can even hold a candle to DFM, and they are looking to do so. Like they said, they're trying to impress us to the point where we can put them as a contender for the throne.
And this game, although on paper, Rascal Jester is the favorite. Looking at Rascal Jester for this game, because of course we got to witness DFM versus Burning Core last week, and Burning Core's, I would say, this some summary execution is what we witnessed here, and we can sort of see how Rascal Jester is feeling, because how clean is Rascal Jester going to look up against Burning Core is more so the bigger questions. Are they going to be confident? Are they going to just draft standard and play a standard game?
I think at this point, which is something that we talked about on the podcast and partly during our last cast too, in terms of we know who our top six are. We know that everyone is getting into playoffs, and if you're looking towards that title, doesn't really matter as long as you are in playoffs because you are looking to beat all of the teams left in. After that point, it's just convincing yourselves that you can win, making sure that you have a confident meta read, that you are playing a macro style which is comfortable to you, and something that you're confident in. Rascal Jesters, I think that it's a very important game for them to at least kind of settle themselves to have that last gasp, the last breath of air before they dive into those playoffs and see how much of a dent they can make.
And that's kind of like, for me, Rascal. I would love to have just seen Rascal Jester like put into some really silly composition for this final. Week 7 is the final week. Have a little bit of fun with it. But as we said, Rascal Jester,
We always
they
have
should
fun
win
with
it.
that. What are you talking about?
Yeah, well, we always get to have fun, but they can't. You can't really just like lock in like, I don't know, new mid lane or something like that, right? Like you actually have to take this game
We'll see.
somewhat properly. You'd hope.
You hope. Well, we're into those picks and bans. Of course, no roster changes for any of these two squads coming into today. Rocketing through the first few. Seems pretty tier listy to me.
Yeah, nothing too out of the ordinary coming through here. As Renekton Ziggs, what a surprise coming in. Gwen Viego, what a surprise coming through. I would expect as a standard another meta ban coming through here for Burning Court. Okay, I say a meta ban. is my read on the meta so poor that I didn't see the Yone coming?
So I wonder if this is because so Yone has always been good into mages, right? He's struggled a little bit against particularly stuff like Renekton was a particular counter in some of the more fighter archetypes. But if you're going to sit there with a mage backline, something like the Syndra that's been cropping up, the Orianna that's been coming back, Yone closes the distance against them and just trades the heck out of them. They can't stand that. Ray Farkey cycling through a couple of different picks up in that top side. And we have seen some Trundle actually unironically first picked. In fact, we even saw that in the NLC. ERL levels not quite up at the this level even at that point, but there's definitely something to be said about the power of some of these more unorthodox first picks, and we were asking for that from Burning Core. Yuhi always was a bit of a utility player, and I think actually the Ashe was one of their better picks thinking back to 2020 summer, that playoff series that we keep talking about versus Dead Nation Focus Me. Yuhi's Ashe was genuinely a force to be threatened with, and Yuhi, you already said in this pregame, hasn't really impressed us this split. One last chance to do so before we go into the off-season break on the Ashe to do so.
And I love Yuhi on the Ashe here, because even if you are struggling to perform, the enchanted crystal arrow can change games. Like, it's always the arrow. I mean, there was that game at Worlds, was it QSKT, where they pulled out the Ashe and got a beautiful cross-map snipe with the arrow to help close the game out. So
that was season 6. They renamed themselves to the Rocks Tigers at that point. Q Tigers were a little bit before that, but that was my favorite series of all time. So you're invoking some very powerful League of Legends history right there. See if it can be powerful enough to get Burning Core out of this rut. Sadly, though, for them, the only thing on the line for Burning Core is to not have the longest loss streak in LJL history. The reason we have not had an 11-game loss streak before is because it wasn't frankly possible. I believe it was a team called Savage Javelin back in Season 5, went 0-10. And Burning Core may have also had a similar record at some point, but the splits weren't long enough to have an 11-game loss streak. Well, Burning Core, with the chance to do so, may actually find themselves at that point, which would not be an accolade they'd like to have.
Yeah, it's a brand of shame. Something like, if anyone watched the Overwatch League, the Shanghai Dragons.
Yeah.
I believe went 0-42 if memory serves me. So
what?
They lost. It was rough, dude. It was one of the roughest things I've ever witnessed in professional esports. 0-42.
Gosh. Well, that's what happens when you don't go for the objective, right? I hear that. I hear that's an Overwatch thing. I never
technically, I mean, there was a bit more to it than just get on the objective.
Nah, just go for the objective. You know. Nah, I always win. Yeah.
Yeah, just like League of Legends, just right-click the enemy champion. What are you doing?
Just kill the Nexus.
Exactly. I must say, the mid lane here is going to be one of the most interesting things to me, because I love a good Ryze performance here. And especially for the Zoe, my mid lane matchups aren't as refined as they used to be, but I feel like Ryze actually can do decently into the Zoe, can't he?
So, in a laning phase, Ryze can fight around the wave, can walk in the wave, and has a lot of control over it. Zoe, though, is a champion which GFM famously used that at MSI to kind of just brute force priority in the early game to be, I'm going to walk out of Fog of War with the long-range Paddle Star, hit the front 3 minions, and they're going to take a lot of damage. Then at that point, Ryze up until, you know, level 2, level 3, when you start chaining through your passives and get a lot of those empowered overloads, can't really contest. And at that level 1 to 3 mark, that's when you start seeing Scuttles fought over, that's when you start seeing Hachimetra on this Jin Zhao. We'll be looking to get some inroads across the map. However, Galliardo, as you were saying, in terms of like great, you know, you always want to see great Ryze performances. Galliardo has always been a Ryze player. When we first started covering the LJL on this channel, the very first game that we cast was Galliardo, who was on Axis at that point, playing Ryze when no one else did back in spring 2020. Didn't work out so well for that team, but it showed the intent, and actually I thought that pick was actually maybe something that should have been played a bit more back then. Galliardo is going to pick it up once again for Burning Core, and now they've also picked up a Thresh and a Set to go alongside it.
Yeah, but I'm a little worried because Burning Core has got a lot of short range, even with the Graves locked in for jungle. And look what Rascal Jester have put together. Forgive me if I'm misreading my champions, but Zoe Ezreal Yuumi looks like the heart of a poke composition coming through here. So
it seems like the kind of thing which has a lot of range, and you're sat there as Ashe trying to have volleys and stuff and being, yay, I outrange people. Well, no, you sadly don't at this point. And though Ashe Thresh can be a strong kill lane, I look at this Ezreal Yuumi, who can take heal, and they can take a cleanse, and they can take an exhaust, because they don't need to take the flash on their support as well. And I think that actually Sol and Secret are very comfortable with what's happening towards the bot side of this map. And it's not just having poke, it's also having follow-up damage. If you go in with the Jin Zhao, if you go in with the Hextech Ultimatum and hook shots, you have a lot of follow-up damage too. You pin someone in place, you're going to absolutely shred through some people with the longer range backline of Rascal Jester. On the other side though, if you're trying to get up close and personal, if you're doing that into a Graves, we've seen how powerful that can be recently.
Yeah, and backed it up with the likes of a Set and a Thresh. Like, if you get close to Burning Core has 100 different ways to take you down. But I'm concerned because I don't think that Rascal Jester is going to let that happen. They're not going to be sloppy enough to allow Burning Core to get that close. Again, Zoe, Ezreal, Yuumi. I decided I'm going to stand up as well. I didn't expect to go back to the camera, so it's not the best angle for me. But again, with the range that Rascal Jester is bringing to the table, right? How is Burning Core meant to engage? Because you either need like a perfect set flag or a death sentence.
What do you mean? This is what we have smokescreen for. This is...
They won't see it coming if all 5 of them are that tightly grouped.
Yeah, I think Burning Core are waiting for an overdrive and then to turn things around with the showstopper and everything else at that point. But if they don't execute that well, and let's be honest, Burning Core have struggled to execute anything well at this split, I don't see how that works out cleanly. You're right, it's a hard to execute composition for a team that has struggled to execute on everything this split. Versus one of the best teams in the league too. Like, this is about as stacked as it gets.
Yeah, it's going to be a difficult uphill battle for Burning Core. And again, I'm just going to be really, really impressed if Burning Core can find these openings. Like, I think the best way that they have to do it is maybe like a pick style, right? Use Yuki's Ash, get a couple picks, Proud follows up with a good hook. I think that's maybe something that they could do, because in a straight 5v5, again, I just don't see how Burning Core pick a fight beyond like Proud getting a monster of a death sentence.
So, well, this is now why we're going to have to look at what's going to happen with early lane pressure into dragon stacking, because if Burning Core have bot lane priority and then stack 2 dragons and then arrive to the objective first for the 3rd and 4th dragon. Okay, well, at that point, they're walking into you. That's fine. That's good. That's what you want them to do. You can kind of take things at your own pace if you arrive to the objective first. But there's like 15 to 20 minutes of work that's got to be put in consistently and successfully before that really comes to the fore. Yes, we know that Rayfaki, we know that Gadiadu have been able to win a lot of lanes in the past. Gadiadu has struggled this split though. Rayfaki, actually uncharacteristically, has been struggling too. And then we look towards the bot lane, which has been an often maligned part of this Burning Core roster. So you're playing with the Graves, who wants to power farm up with lanes that are likely going to be struggling just due to nameplates on, and it makes it even worse for Burning Core. Of course, I do want to talk about it from the Rascal Jester side of things too, because you talk about the range advantage. However, they also need to be clean on the initiation too. They do have the Yuumi to help the Jin Zhao and the Camille go in and keep themselves alive a bit longer, have ways to reset and dodge out on some damage with the Crescent Guard and of course the Hextech Ultimatum moment of untargetability too. But it's not like that composition is easy to execute. But the reason we're not talking about Rascal Jester so much is because they've just consistently executed anyway. They are a top 2 team. They're going to be in the Juggernaut match. We expect great things of them.
Yeah, it's a burden of expectation, you could say. Like, if the Rascal Jesters lose, even though they're using a harder to execute composition, it's going to be massive. Because that's, as you said, about the quality of play that we expect from this lineup, especially when you compare it to the opposite numbers across the board here. With Burning Core, I mean, I feel like it's kind of beating a dead horse, isn't it? Saying that they've really, I'm going to say, struggled to find an identity, right? Like, every time they're drafting a little bit differently, like, I was really hopeful for Rayfaki and Ones to sort of dominate the top half 2v2, and that never really happened. And then there was like, oh, maybe mid laner can do something, but then Gariaru really struggled to hold their own in the mid lane, and then bot lane became a black hole of pressure at one point.
Speaking about that, so obviously the laner which they had in mid for 2020 summer, that last spark of hope we saw from this team, their last playoffs performance, was when they had Yu-Gi-Oh in that mid lane. They took DFM to 5 games, mentioned that enough times on this stream already, but this is a team which we expected great things of. And when we saw Gadiadu come in, we thought, okay, Yu-Gi-Oh was good in that series, but struggled during the regular split. Wasn't really comfortable in the supportive cat champions, and then the carries were were good, but were they enough to carry this team? And we thought, okay, so Gadiadu, who was maybe a top 3 or 4 mid laner within 2020, which was a stacked mid lane year, by the way. Saying top 3 or 4 is actually very impressive in a league of Arya, Piri, and Saros playing at the same time, and having, that name chucked in there. And of course, Dasher was still around there at that point, too. Gadiadu coming into this roster, we thought would be an upgrade, and it hasn't really been. It feels like some of that chemistry, which this team used to have around those frantic fights with once popping off in the carries, very Farky popping off in the carries, hasn't really happened. We've seen them fall apart in mid-game time after time, but as we said, one last time to see if this team can impress us before they go into that off-season and try and rebuild again.
Well, it's time to find out, will Burning Core be able to show some form of life in the final match here? Rascal Jester, of course, we've talked about it time and time again. Hard to execute, but it's expected of them coming into this game here. And Recap and Secret just sort of hanging out in the middle lane together. As doesn't look like there'll be any early shenanigans. And based on the supports being brought to the table, I'm not really surprised. I know a lot of Threshers aren't a huge fan of starting that Q level 1 just because it really hurts your ability to leash. And of course, the level 2 threat, you really want that flay and the bonus damage to boot.
Wait, what do you mean? Once just solo invades, just walks in and says, I'm going to go find myself a Xin Zhao. Level 1, I guess that's okay. And once, back on the Graves. This is probably going to be going towards the Lethality Graves. You see the Dark Harvest in there. Likely to be an Eclipse. Once has always been a Graves player, though. This guy has played it, went back even in spring. To lesser success, played it back in 2020, to much more success. Now that Graves is coming back onto the table, even as a solo laner at this point, is powerful across many different roles at this point, I'm interested to see what happens with him, actually. Because is this at the point where Once can actually become relevant when you need to be on the Graves, or has the game fallen apart by that point? Because this isn't a Xin Zhao. This isn't something that can gank super early and kind of prop up the lanes which have so often struggled. But it's kind of investing that gold, investing that power for later on, and saying, if we make it to that point, maybe we can carry a game. Maybe we can even do that versus Rascal Jesters.
I mean, it's worth a crack, isn't it? You haven't got much
What
to
have you got to lose?
Exactly. You don't have anything to lose here. You might as well give it a try here. As the other thing that I think is going to be quite interesting, because I know a lot of people are talking about it recently, is Yuumi going for this like full AP build, like Luden's Echo itemization here. Like, yay, nay? Do you think Secret's gonna try pull that one out of the bag?
Look, it's not quite the same as old. Look, Yuumi is still in a more balanced state than they were back in season 9, I guess, going back to that point when, we saw it in the group stage as we had the Garen Yuumi and everything like that.
Oh, God.
And because Moonstone was hit so much as an item in a lot of ways too, it does feel like the AP variant of that build has had more impact than the straight Enchanter build from that point. Particularly, it's a little bit strange for me because, of course, mage items have been often quite talked down on, maligned, even though the Luna's got a lot cheaper. You look at a lot of the sub-Enchanter items, you go, huh, wait, that's a really nice item. But, of course, you don't have AoE shields to really get the most use out of it. Putrefier, amongst other things. I think it does give you the ability to, again, as kind of you were saying, as soon as like the Ezreal Zoe Yuumi rule locked in, saying, hang on, how does Ashe play these fights? Because you get tagged by that Prowling Projectile, you're not very happy.
No. And then, of course, you've got other things you have to watch out for. The Paddle Star and the, of course, Ezreal slapping you across the face with his Q, as we're seeing Once actually getting priority over the bottom side Scuttle Crab here. And this could actually mean that Once is... Wait, could Once double Scuttle Hachimetra realistically?
They're going to fight for the top side. They're going to fight for the top side. And now this is quite interesting because it's the Rise that's got the priority at this point. It hasn't been just perma Paddle Star in the way from Recap and shoving it in. It seems like Gadiadu's managed to get the best of that. And now Recap... well, I mean, at this point, though, it does look like it's actually bounced back in time for the second Scuttle. Priority for the first Scuttle went towards Burning Core. Second's gone back up towards Rascal Jester. Not going to be a double Scuttle. One's not going to find themselves an artificial advantage at that point. And Graves has, of course, gone down towards their Krugs hatch match, looking towards the top side to see if there was anything to take there. Bit of a fencing match between both these junglers, but no one really gaining a sizable advantage from it.
I think part of that is if you do look at there's a certain mana pool which is a little bit starved at that point, which is probably where one's like, hey, can we contest double Scuttle? And Gary's like, bro, I got no mana. What do you want me to do? I'm Rise. Like, yeah, you know what? Fair enough. Have a good day.
I didn't actually look at the items from the Rise because you just say, oh, it'll be mana Crystal, probably, and then you just kind of wait for them to come back with a tier at some point. Actually gone for the Corrupting Potion. I guess that means that they've gone towards the Time Warp Tonic. I would be interested, which is kind of interesting in its own way, because I'm like, well, if you go for that, then you don't have Ravenous Hunter, which is so important to Rise. So maybe they actually didn't go towards that. Maybe it's just the Corrupting Potion for a little bit extra early trading power. Either way, they've gone back with the tier. Now they haven't used the teleport. Get themselves a cheetah recall. Don't lose anything meaningful for that in their own way. And they're back in lane.
Yeah. And it's looking quite good now. It now has the tier stacking up here. And actually, it feels quite nice, honestly, for Burning Core. I know, I feel, as I say this, something's going to go disastrously wrong. Let's talk about mid lane. Recap is getting some nice damage there. But Proud on the prowl has been able to maybe dissuade Recap from being too aggressive for the next 30 seconds. Maybe.
So it's not the Predator Thresh that which occasionally Secret brings out on the side of Rascal Jester. I remember us talking about that quite a lot in Spring, actually, going like, that's not an Aftershock. No, it's not a Guardian either. Okay, he wants to do some really funny shenanigans by buying Shurelias and then popping forward with the Predator. Not going to be that, going towards the Guardian. Proud still making their way out of lane. And honestly, I love that Proud has been able to get themselves this Thresh again. When I think of Proud, I still think of his set support, which is a bit of a playmaker. But on top of that, stuff like the Thresh and the Bard, right? This guy's always been a playmaker, and now he's up against probably the best playmaking support outside of, well, of course, Gang himself, the Alistair God, inside of DFM, has a chance now to at least put his name in that hat again, give him something to be happy about from the split, and again, a bit of a barren wasteland for Burning Core's players.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying for a while, I feel like now that I'm really, like, out of the Burning Core lineup, Proud is probably the biggest one that steps to me, because I like Proud's play. Like, when we watch him, even in the games that are going disastrously, if you look at how Proud is playing individually, I think he's playing brilliantly. But the problem is that there's just no room for him to really show off what he can do, because, you know, Yuhi really struggles, and then maybe once and Rayfaki just don't get online when they need to, and suddenly you got this, you know, playmaker who's looking for something to do, and then realizes, well, if I do anything, me and my entire team is going to die.
There's something to that, and also I think that when you are playing individually well as a support, I mean, we said this a lot about Kazu, and we said this a lot about MSI, right? You can play individually well as a support, find the huge engages, but there's so much unseen work that goes into the support role, which is about linking up with your jungler, about making sure the wards are in the right place, resetting correctly, making sure that when your enemy support resets, that you're winning the mind game as well, to make sure that they don't have an uncontested run themselves. And that's something which Burning Core, in terms of combining all of these factors, has struggled with. That's why their mid game has looked so shocking in some ways, because I don't think it's Proud or one's necessarily doing anything at fault individually. They're just not working together on the same page.
Yeah, and that's kind of the heartbreaking thing, right? And that's where Burning Core, they've struggled in the laning phase, and you hit to that mid game, and they're just not a 5-man unit. They're 5 people who just randomly queued up together sometimes, is what it feels like. And it's really heartbreaking in that way to see, as Burning Core looks like they're getting some good signs of life, right? We're seeing the blue buff transfer, which, of course, Rise is desperate for. Especially because, look at the build path. Just rush the early CDR boot, which is great, but then, again, you don't have any mana to work with right now.
You don't, but it also means you just get to walk back to lane time and time after again and reset all the time. And I hate to be the bearer of quite disturbing, nay, terrifying news.
Oh, no.
Midnight, this is quite a slow-paced game. Just
oh no, not again.
Throwing that out there. I'm seeing a lot happening, and that does worry me. It's got my spidey senses tingling. So we're gonna go and talk about something. Well, we've got the time to, right? You see the Herald going down. Burning Core will have the ability to get themselves an injection of gold somewhere, and this is quite a time-efficient Herald too. It's not taken ages to take. It's not been moving an AD carry out of the bot lane too. Proud actually working the way up towards that side. I want to ask you actually about Rascal Jester, because, you know, I echo chamber myself. You know, I talk with quite a lot of people. As Rascal Jester actually mentioned getting caught out here. Maybe I'll ask you about that in a bit.
Yeah, reinforcements are coming in, though, and it's not exactly in Rascal Jester's favor. It's flashing over the wall. Enchanted Kisselao does connect, but a beautiful hook from Proud. Not willing to commit to it, however, and I think quite smartly through Hachimecha getting out alive, but I'm not so sure he deserved that one.
Oh, bless you, Hachimecha, for trying to bring some life into this game. I was getting worried, of course. We'll abate those worries for now. But okay, actually, so, I mean, after seeing that play, and saying, okay, Hachimecha caught out, maybe didn't deserve to live, but he did anyway. Rascal Jester, of course, are locked into that Juggernaut match. We knew that heading into this match, into this week, into this match. We talked about Burning Core and how we don't have expectations for them, nor can we, because they're not going to be in playoffs. Rascal Jesters have to face off against DFM. For you, is there a player which actually has to step up to show a different facet of their play to make you excited for them in playoffs outside of course, trying to face off against DFM? Anything you want to see from this team?
I feel like for Rascal Jester, hold on a second.
Living
Proud
bot
is
lane? Is
looking
that
for
something you want to
something.
see?
Does get the smoke screen. No, oh, what a beautiful cleanse there. That was really well done by Soul.
I see how this is. I see how this is. I prepared for a slow game. Whenever I try and say, because one of the skills of being a caster is figuring out how much time you got to talk about stuff. Apparently, all Burning Core exists to do is make sure that I don't have a fun game with that sense. Anyway, back to the question. Rascal Jester, what do you want to see from the playoffs?
I think the biggest person who really needs to step up, be like, obviously, I think the whole of Rascal Jesters needs to do well, but my eyes are going to be on Hachimecha in the jungle. And the reason why isn't because I haven't been impressed by what they've done, but it's who he's up against. Steel.
Yeah.
The guy who decided, hey, Shaco looks fun, I'm playing Shaco. Like, if you're going against a guy who has that kind of energy, and we all know how damn good Steel is as a player, I feel like you're really going to have so much impact in the jungle. I'm talking like Lee Sin involved in 4 kills by 10 minutes level aggressiveness coming out there. Because in the mid lane matchup, I didn't know, Arya is just going to be, we've talked about this as Yuki, forced to flash to safety, but I feel like the mid lane matchup is important, and that's going to be based on how Hachimecha deals with Steel in the jungle. Soul has got some fancy footwork. The exhaust goes down. And TP from the flank, but Secret is low, so is Soul, so they might not get reinforcements. Ultimatum locks Yuki in place and not escaping anytime soon. Oof. But the Lantern not able to save the AD carry. As Hachimecha holding in the front line, their Proud is taken down low, but not going down yet. And finally, we get some action with only 1 kill.
Right, so of course the first act of this mighty play is an arrow onto the bot lane, the Captain Jack cleanse. We come back very quickly to see that Rascal Jester pick off Yuhi when he is stood alone, and that is not a place where Ashe can stand. You are not a Kai'Sa that wave clears for free. You're not a Tristana, an Ezreal, of course, in this game, or a Ziggs. The meta for so long has been, you can leave this AD carry alone while the supports go have fun elsewhere. It's the AD carry daycare. They just get to sit down there and you forget about them for a while. Not the case in this matchup, though. Rascal Jesters, luckily for themselves, dodge out on the arrow coming back the other way. We saw already how much damage Once has on this. Graves, Rascal Jesters, though, expend some teleports, get that pressure down towards bot side, get themselves on the board. But where is that invested gold from that earlier Herald going? It's going top side, and that means Rayfarki gets themselves that injection of cash they needed to keep themselves relevant in this game. We haven't seen them do anything really across the map so far.
Yeah, but I love that we're seeing Burning Core is the more proactive team here. Burning Core has got the first Dragon in the game. They got the first Rift Turret of the game. They got the first turret of the game. This is a fantastic sign of life for Burning Core. And Rascal Jesters, this is not looking nearly as clean of a game as what we witnessed when DFM faced off against Burning Core last week.
Well, I mean, by this time in the DFM game, we'd had an incredible dive of juggled aggro's bot side into the execution top side that we saw. So, yes, maybe some stuff to be happy with from Burning Core. They're the ones on the front foot. But I look at this from the early game from Rascal Jester, I'm thinking, maybe they could have done something around the Jinzao a bit earlier. Maybe they could have found a way to get that Zoe priority a little bit harder over the Rise. Of course, that's partly on Gadiadu playing well on the Rise. Bubble barely missing onto Proud. That would have been a change of tack for Rascal Jester. And that's going to be something which I'm now looking for. How did they start making the proactive plays? Who are they calling on to make the big plays? For so long, it has been Sol in the team fights, Secret roaming elsewhere. Well, I mean, when you're on the Yuumi, you don't get to really roam yourself. So I'm looking across this part and I'm saying, well, you already called out Hachimecha. Let's see what he can do on that Jinzao. Let's see which feathers he can ruffle.
Well, so far, not a whole lot has come out of the Xin Zhao, which made for me, but I love seeing Xin Zhao's be aggressive, getting something done, and right now it's been very farm-centric. Sure, you've got basically 10 CS over Once, but Once has had some really good moves around the map, and that kind of has netted, well, as you can see, a bit of a goal difference between the two teams here, courtesy of the Rift Herald. That was, of course, dropped on the top.
I'd love to ask production. Yes, that means you, Lexi, sat on the sofa over there. Could you give me a stat on how many times, what's the percentage that Burning Core have been ahead at 15 minutes? Or what their average goal difference at 15 is? Because I look at this, being 1,500 gold, particularly against Rascal Jesters, this seems very uncommon for me in the LJL. I mean, right now it just seems like, as we're seeing right, I'm just trying to have a look. Burning Core, their gold difference is normally minus 1.5k. So they've actually completely flipped that around. Very interesting. Thank you, production.
Yeah, and this game just feels a little bit weird where Rascal Jesters, I think they've come in not with the intention to show how clean they are against Burning Core, but more so sort of it's Burning Core, what kind of threat are they, right? And Burning Core have approached this game very differently. They're saying, well, yeah, sure, we can't hit playoffs, but we can still show that, hey, we're actually making some levels of improvements. We're seeing good objective control, and seeing Proud have just rushed the Moby Boots. I feel like Proud spent more time on the top half of the map now than in the bottom lane.
Yeah. And I guess that has led to a CS advantage bot side. We can see Mythics hit by both AD carries. 10 CS lead for the Ezreal. And Ezreal, well, we know that often it's in the early stages of the game that they can get crushed in lane. It's in the mid game. It's in towards the 2-3 items where they become so hard to deal with throughout League's history. So Proud, at least being able to get the rest of the map ahead is good. I just wonder whether they could have made a play bot side to make sure the Ezreal and the Yuumi didn't get out of this laning phase unscathed, though.
It's been a slow game, but honestly, I don't think it's necessary. I feel like you could have gone for that like of a play, but look at the current game state. You don't need to make that kind of force. You attempted it with Proud, and of course, we did see the Captain Jack-esque cleanse as a result of it, but instead, you've played a slower game. Sure, you're a kill down, but Burning Core, again, the objective control out of this team has honestly shocked me. Again, they've secured both Rift Heralds, they got the first dragon, and they gave up dragon number 2 for turret gold. So I'm really impressed, honestly, with what Burning Core is showing so far.
Okay, I mean, well, yeah, on our champion select shopping list of things that Burning Core could do, part of it was, okay, how's the laning phase going to go? What can they do to get themselves early dragon leads and stuff like that to then force the enemy team to come into them? So they do have, of course, one dragon apiece at this point. They got their Herald. They have themselves a sizable lead, and particularly having those side lane towers starting to fall at that point, there's a hint of optimism there. It's not quite a spark, but it's just you can smell the smoke starting to raise off the dry leaves.
It's a sign of life more than anything. Again, we've said time and time again, and I feel like this is kind of beating a dead horse again, but Burning Core has come into some games with what clearly looks like a battle plan, and it's just sort of, it opens the door and then falls down a trap hole. And this game, it feels like they've seen the trap hole. They're like, okay, they've jumped over it, they've made it to the other side. Now there's a trapdoor somewhere ahead of them. They have no idea where it is.
See, the thing about this is that, like, I know, of course, yourself being Australian, there are quite a few famous spiders which hide down the bottom of trap holes.
Oh yeah,
the funnel webs and then the famous trapdoor spiders. Thinking like, yeah, maybe don't want to spend too long in there. Don't want to awaken anything.
I mean, yeah, there's I mean, if they go to like 30 minutes in there, even drop bears are going to start like attacking from Australia, man. We're just gonna they're gonna like find a way out of the trees and start swimming up to Japan and like, you, what's going on, man? What's happening up there?
So I'm not sure if it's a thing for koalas, but I know it's a thing for sloths, because they're similarly just very lethargic. Where if you're rescuing a sloth or a koala from a wildfire or something, what you do is you just pick them up, just put them back on the tree, because it spends so much energy for them to climb up it. It's actually a really big investment for them and really helpful for them. Just put them on the branch. Well, Burning Core, they've been given a bit like a half a foot of leverage off the forest floor at this point. Like, they can just about start wrapping their marsupial claws around the tree trunk. See how far they can climb up it.
This analogy's gone somewhere weird, man.
It's me. You have cast before? Just saying.
I'm trying to think of actually, want to know the best way to play?
I'm not a big knowledge of the marsupials.
Best thing I know about marsupials is that half the time they're angry at you when you look at them, so you just want to avoid those things at all costs. I don't know. Have you never like agitated a koala?
Sadly, there aren't many koalas in the UK. So no.
I keep forgetting that like there's only one person on the LJL broadcasting that is Australian.
I have. So I do actually have some family out in Australia. Got an uncle that lives around the East Coast. So I have been out to Australia before. I have occasionally seen koalas once or twice back in 2005. It's been a little while, but Okay, I'll hope I haven't had any koala grudges held against me by that point.
If this is for just for chat because we want to go a little. Oh, never mind.
Oh
I was gonna
yes,
say. I
yes,
was
our
gonna say
banks
the
has
break.
left until
You
last until the pause ends.
I was gonna say if we had a bit longer pause chat, there is a brilliant video of a koala war scream. You should go check it out. But never mind, we've got a team fight coming up. TP is coming through. Rascal Jesters are not gonna let Burning Core take this freely. Never mind, it gets secured anyway. But the fight might kick off. There's Showstopper coming through in the back end. Ray Farky's dived in, nice, but will it be there as Burning Core is left really untouched? And Rascal Jester is not looking great in this fight here. Soul getting caught out of position, forced to run.
Rise ult?
Ground warp on the flank, and Rascal Jester says, nope, we don't want to be anywhere here. Yuhi going forward, Soul's going to go down. Recap ain't long for this world either, and once is the janitor, baby. Let's go.
Excuse me, 5 for 1 across that fight from Burning Core. What a lethargic approach to that dragon. Rascal Jesters were truly the sloths compared to the koalas in this one, maybe even to the drop bears. Haven't reached that point quite yet, but we talked about how dangerous it would be to engage into Burning Core if they arrived at the objective first. They stare at the objective going down, they don't get any of their poke coming through. A bubble lands, and they don't follow up on it. That's actually just before this clip already comes through, so that's kind of the start of their woes. And this is where the game gets very easy to play from Burning Core's composition. You've got pick CC into pick CC, and suddenly Hachimesh has lost, well, 90% of their HP before their ultimate can even come out. They cast it as a kind of like a last gasp effort, and it's not nearly enough at that point. There's a mobility advantage from this point too for Burning Core. Graves starts to get running forward. You have volleys to help you out on that approach too. And when you're stuck behind enemy lines, well, there's only one way that's going to end. Burning Core, clean up house. Suddenly, we're asking a lot of questions.
Yeah, it's a bit odd to see that. But then again, we talked about Rascal Jester are basically running a poke composition, and they charge into a fight without landing their poke.
But they don't even cleanly land the engage. It's kind of like, okay, cool. At least you could use that poke for like follow-up damage. If you kill the Graves because you've landed a bubble or you've jumped onto them with the shins, that's great, okay? You know, sometimes you don't need to land all of that poke. Sometimes you do need to be careful about your distances either way, though, because Burning Core potentially looking for a flank as Sol is trying to wave clear in the mid lane. 3,000 gold lead, 2 dragons now to Burning Core. And this is actually at the point now we think, okay, well, once his Graves has been really good in the past, he's really good in that fight, suddenly you're now playing from ahead on aggressive jungler that outfarms even more and more as the game goes on, and you have a whole bunch of gold with you. This is a prime game for once to pick up the banner, pick up that standard and bear it into battle, and give himself something to hope for in the next split.
Well, it's looking good so far. Once the only member in the game on 2 fully completed items, if you don't count boots there, and they're actually making a massive push down bot side because Recap can't safely contest this. Yeah,
you have double AD carry. You've got and of course when you build lethality, you do a lot of damage to towers. Graves with the auto attack reset on his quick draw too. The E allows him to chunk through towers very, very quickly. If he gets right into that melee range, gets all of the bullets on the tower, shreds through it. Extra gold in pocket. Not really that much time invested too. Rascal Jesters do of course have 3 towers taken themselves. That means that the map is quite wide open. Potentially they can start pushing up and get vision because the mid lane outer turret for Burning Core has fallen and start playing around Zoe as that poke threat. But playing poke compositions is difficult. In fact, when we were talking about in Champs, I was saying, oh, Burning Core's composition is difficult to execute. So is Rascal Jesters, but we expect them to do that. Well, now it's less of an expectation, more of an obligation if they want to win this game.
Yeah, and the way that they can sort of... It's weird to say that how do Rascal Jesters get back into the game against Burning Core? That's a sentence I didn't think I would be saying coming into today's matchup. But the way that you do it is, again, that poke, and it's all around the objectives, right? Look at Burning Core when they're set up around the next dragon or set up around a Baron, and you have to keep them there without them starting the objective and just poke at them. The Zoe Paddle Star, the Ezreal harassment coming out as well, and even the Yuumi with a nearly fully completed first item needs to land, as we see Sol just completely whiff the ultimate there.
I'm actually not sure if that's just blocked out by a W. I'm sat there like, Thresh Lantern is pretty cool. I like that.
This damage needs to actually start landing for Rascal Jester, as we're seeing The TP
Good
from
bubble.
Garyaru. Bubble coming through. Will it really follow up into anything? Once it's taken down low, but he's down low. Dragon spawning in 15. This is the kind of poke you're talking about is critical to make it work.
And it's all because the mid lane outer turret has been taken. You want a good example right on your screens about why is it important you take that objective? Well, it's because it allows you not just to push that wave into that mid lane in a turret, it allows you angles to start using range advantages or, of course, deny them from the other side. Sol hops away from the hook.
Yeah, and we see Kanatu is on Dragon duty, which is fantastic because Burning Core made a play around the Baron, said, hey, we might do the objective, you got to come over and stop us, and, well, Rascal Jester didn't send everyone, as they should have. Whoa, what is this? Aggressive coming from Burning Core, and Rascal Jester's Robert Proud gets a beauty of a hook coming through here, and Hatchamacha will not make it out alive. Soul is now on the front line there, and once he's feeling it, even with the exhaust, Soul is forced to flee from the fight. Rascal Jester got engaged on, and that was a ballsy move from the Burning Core lineup.
Well, it looked like it was a rise ult into the many circles of hell. Turns out to be somewhere a little bit more celestial than that one, because Burning Core find a lot off of that. The hook goes and follows it, but luckily there's a portal jump to go back to.
Yeah, and Proud getting saved by his teammate there obviously did fall asleep and body blocks any of the follow-up damage. And now a full reset coming in from Burning Core. All 5 of them will be throwing themselves about. Yeah, let's take a quick look at this. So I'm so confused by Garyaru's decision. Like, it seems like such a risky rise ultimate to take because they see the dragons started up. Is it just see one and go?
Well, I mean, you did talk about it's kind of hard for Burning Core to engage. Well, you don't really have to engage if you're in melee range. Really, kind of an engage. The arrow actually is unironically quite important here to stop Kanatu from jumping in, using a Hextech ultimatum and chunking them out so they're not comfortable engaging at that point. As soon as Sol jumps into once, I thought the fight was actually over at that point. Fight between the top laners!
Yeah, Ray Farkey taking down low there. Kanatu with that Divine Sunder and Ravenous Hydra feeling it. Couldn't do it, but while this is happening, there's no way, right? There's no way they don't see this coming.
They've seen it. They've responded. I think they were trying to maybe just stop Kanatu from pushing in so brazenly, so boldly towards the bot lane in a turret. Ray Farkey survives the ignite, trades ult for ult. Nothing really else comes of that. Kanatu is strong. It does have a CS advantage. Does have those 2 items like you were saying. But that's why Burning Core don't really want them on the side lane, continually pushing in and making a nuisance of the map state.
And I really like what Kanatu is doing here with the Camille, right? Because you're putting Ray Farkey in a situation where Ray Farkey can't win this fight on the sideline. He's 2 levels down, for God's sake here. He's not going to win the fight. And so Burning Core have to say, okay, well, Ray Farkey, you're in survival duty, because if we send anyone to help you, Rascal Jester can look to set up objective control around the Baron, and then Burning Core, well, we see what happens when they start getting poked out.
And you know, I almost wonder if this is a hull breaker game from Kanatu third, because I know you don't really want to go at second, but if you're pushing into towers, even just getting singular autos, getting extra damage onto your cannon minions too, that could actually be a way for Rascal Jesters to avoid the 5v5s that they have thus far been struggling with. Yes, Sol has been very important. Going to go towards the Frozen Heart third too, which I think is going to be incredibly important. Already got that Triforce instead of the Divine Sunder. They're going towards more attack speed, more of that consistent auto attack damage. You need to be closer range to do that. If you're close range against the Graves, that's normally not the place you want to be. Frozen Heart gives you the armor, gives you attack speed reduction towards that Graves too, meaning that this Graves going to struggle to have the efficacy they might want to assassinate AD carries the way they have been doing with the lethality build.
And it's almost mandatory because we saw even with the exhaust dropped onto once, there's a ton of damage here as Burning Core are feeling it here. Ray Farkey does have TP, but Kanatu is already around and available. So the poke coming from TP coming out early. Burning Core have to commit to this one now. They've chosen a Hatchamacha. Where are you? Can you get in position to steal? They're going to be too late. It is secured by once, but now Rascal Jester looking to pick the fight there. They will realm warp out quite a few of them at least. Ray Farkey will be the sacrifice. Will they get any more than that? What a beautiful snipe there. Recap is going for flashes. No, misses the Paddle Star, but once is taken down low. The Lantern has been left behind. The jungler, the man who secured the objective, is killed for it. But 3 members make it out with Baron.
Dude, that was actually one of the better ways to use the Rise ult at that point, because it doesn't matter if you are CC'd as someone who is not the Rise if you're stood in the Realm Walk. Garyaru puts it down, walks out of it, makes sure that the Yuumi ult can't cancel it, and gets the teammates out to safety. Gonna go right back to the start of this play, though. The Baron's been started. You can see the damage which you get between multiple AD carries and the Rise 2. Seeing consistent single target DPS. And immediately the first thing I notice is, hey, not a lot of this poke is landing. When you're in that pit, you expect it to go much, much worse. At least the rearguard action is not as perfect as it could be from Burning Core. Ray Farkey teleports in to buy some time. Sadly, they lose another member outside of that. Rascal Jester not facing down a 3-lane Baron push.
Yeah, it's only 3 members instead of the 3-lane push, but it's still going to be kind of difficult to manage because, you know, with the Baron push, you really want teleport to be that threat. And I see a certain mid laner who has Baron, who has TP, could go for it, but instead they get a nice Enchanted Crystal Arrow and follow up there. It looks like they, oh my god, that's a Raikkonen he didn't want to get on.
Whoa.
And now Rascal Jesters, they're marching in one by one. This is a disaster.
No.
Why? You can't fight that.
Why is this the game which Burning Core turn up in? After nothing matters. This is just, as we were saying, to stop them from having a truly awe-inspiring loss streak. And against the second best team in our region, Burning Core, they turn up to play, and it looks pretty good.
Yeah, they're saying, okay, these are the objectives we want to play around. Here's what we want to do. And it's looked good. They've come in with a game plan. And Rascal Jesters look lost as Soul is trying to fight on the front line here. But he needs to be so careful because, again, without the poke landing, Rascal Jester cannot be the ones to pick the fighters. Realm Warp down, Dragon is up, and I don't see a world where they can contest this.
But you don't have high health bars. There's a teleport and Airstack ultimatum. I think you absolutely can fight this.
Well, Soul is looking for it. Proud forced to flash away. Dragon is picked up by ones, but how much will Burning Core lose? They'll lose their support here. Yuhi could get caught out. Flashes preemptively, not wanting to get caught by that hookshot there. A beautiful Enchanted Arrow slows that down. It will not save the Ashe, but it will save Ray Farkey once and Gary Aru.
Second play, second rear guard retreating action from Burning Core. This time it nets them a dragon, but all the way through this, Rascal Jesters are finding incremental advantages, bits on the side, these collateral bits of extra resources they can use to fight the next fight. So, they're down against Soul Point now, but they have taken away the last of that Baron buff. The Baron power play is only 1,000 gold, all things said and done. Rascal Jesters not out of this by any means. They are behind. They're not winning the 5v5s as it stands, but they have options.
Yeah, it's not like they're dead in the water, right? Like,
No.
we've seen what that looks like, you and I, when Burning Core faced off against DFM. We know what dead in the water looks like at 30 minutes.
The Mariana Trench of League of Legends.
No escape once you get trapped down to that thing, unfortunately. But for Rascal Jester, they still got good signs of life, right? We're seeing, even though the fights, they're winning the fights, but they're not getting to the objective first. And I feel like that's what Rascal Jester now need to do. So when the next dragon spawns, the next Baron spawns, whichever one comes first, you need to get there first. You need to set up vision control first. And as Burning Core has to run into you. And that is how you can start slapping down the health bars to the point where when they finally do get on top of you, you've poked them down to half health, and Burning Core with half their health bars is not going to be looking good.
So, absolutely. And again, one of the things that's going to help with their approach towards objectives, the arrow flies and misses.
Yeah, I think Soul knew that was coming, given the skirmishing that Proud and Once were pulling out.
They had a cleanse, they had a flash. That wasn't likely to lead to anything in terms of actual kills, but with a minute and a half on the barrel, would have been very important to take away some of those defensive options. Not going to be the case. Worth the shot, just barely misses out on it. Yuhi actually had some very important arrows this game, making their mark.
And I actually really enjoy the Yuhi's build. Because we haven't really talked about builds too much today, particularly in this game, because what's going on is really fun. But I really like this Ashe build here. It hasn't got a lot of CDR, but it's going to have the slows just ready to go.
So I've been talking to a couple of like the EU, a couple of EU UK based higher elo players, and this is something which has been around the place, just thinking, actually, maybe full crit is not like the way to go right now. Maybe you go towards something a bit more on hitty. Wit's End, giving you move speed alongside having the approach velocity on the inspiration tree to give you even more move speed when you hit a W or an auto attack as well. It means that Ashe is an incredible chase down champion at that point. plus the ability to just kite around with the Immortal Shield Bow, because you don't need anything like the Kraken Slayer for extra DPS, because the Rage Blade certainly helps you with that too, actually becomes a real menace to try and get on top of if you don't cleanly shut them down. And as we said with Rascal Jester, it's like, okay, they can kind of poke out, but their engage is fleeting at best, and the engage is coming from Burning Core.
Yeah, and Rascal Jester are looking very spread out here as a beautiful hook lands, but they're not going to choose to follow up on that. Ray Farkey is taken down low, not able to get a good haymaker on the back end of it. As the fast chapter coming through there, Kanatu finds his engage. Burning Core forced to flee for the hills there. They cannot fight a fair fight when they are getting poked down so aggressively.
And while the hook lands onto Kanatu, it lands onto someone on the front line. Starting to see why this Ezreal Yuumi is such a thorn in the side in late game teamfight. Sol was free firing for most of that. Very confident to keep jumping forward, keep shifting forward. Now they move on to the Baron. It's not just Burning Core with fast Baron DPS.
Yeah, and Rascal Jester should be able to boot this down forward once, gets in position to steal it, not able to do that as Ray Farkey in the position there. What, Sol? What is going on, buddy? That is unnecessarily aggressive, and now they're being herded. This is hunting cattle. Ray Farkey, no, you can't go in by yourself. The ants cannot go marching in, but Burning Core decided to play the music, and unfortunately they have tripped on their own damn shoes. They maybe tied their shoelaces a bit too tight, as Burning Core are now just going to get wiped from the face of Summoner's Rift, and what could have been so good has fallen apart. They have finally found the trapdoor to fall into.
It's much later than we normally expect from this team. Who puts them into it, though? Who pushes them down, you know, the pit of Sparta, that endless hole in the ground? It's Sol, honestly. You think it's a bad shift forward, and it kind of is. But it does allow him, however, to get meaningful damage down and still reset the fight with the Yuumi. It's not nearly as bad a fight, not nearly as bad as play, because you have the healer that isn't just a shielder at that point. Sol and Secret somehow calculating the correct amount of HP, get out with a very important team fight win.
I'd call that less calculated, a more controlled chaos coming through. And because, okay, the start of the fight is the typical, we can't pick a fight.
So this is the autobiography of one Burning Core called Chaos Ensues. That's the title of this book. See that Kanatu uses the hookshot to kind of buffer out of that CC. Used that a couple of times this game, but once you've used that initial barrage to try and close down, so it's pretty much what we said on the outro to that team fight. Sol is very free to go in and keep firing, keep getting those mystic shots, and we already said that consistent DPS with the Triforce, very strong when they do get into the middle of things. Sol isn't actually on the Baron from the start of this. It still goes down very, very quickly. I was worried for a second if once would manage to pull the trigger on that ultimate, which wasn't quite up at that point. You can see how close that was. It's still like 500 HP in it, but that's one auto from that Graves and it kills you. It's a one-man ultimate coming in from Ray Farkey at that point. Just really doesn't get much done. Maybe could have flashed for a face breaker. The rest of the team, not quite there in time though. Slight mispositioning, slight miscommunication, lead to a Burning Core loss.
And it's so heartbreaking to look at that, because if Burning Core chose not to chase it, now I get that they just secured Baron, you really want to try and get something out of that one. But if they don't overchase that, it could be good, as Enchanted Crystal Arrow does connect, but there's no real follow-up. They even collateral damage being used there from once. That execute is being thrown out for that poke damage, trying to match.
He's tired. Yeah, he's tired. Oh, that's the shield bow gone. I saw that on target. I'm like, stay on target, stay on target. Goes straight down and bullseyes the one prat with the T16. But Yuhi does get out alive, albeit with one less shield to play with.
And this is going to be the inhibitor crumbling here. Burning Core, again, what can they do here? They without the Enchanted Crystal Arrow, they haven't got a way to start a fight, because Proud can't get close enough to throw out the death sentence. Ray Farkey can't flank, because where can you flank from? You're being pushed in.
Well, you can maybe flank with a Rizal. That's what they tried in that last fight, but I mean, you said poke comp for Rascal Jester when you have a Baron. It's very much a siege comp. It evolves into that. We can see the shots flying left, right, and center. The artillery pounding down on the areas around this Burning Core base. Kanatu's left on the top side. Burning Core have chosen to go.
Yeah, they'll look for something, but they couldn't find it, and then once again back away. They haven't got solid crowd control to stop Rascal Jester from fleeing. And that's a heartbreaker part. His soul is basically, he has Kanatu on backup, but he's basically 2v5ing in the enemy base, saying, come on, let's do this. As the Intended Crystal connects, does not land the hook shot. Kanatu could be dead here. Chooses to try and pick the rest of the fight there, but will get nuked once, though. Will lose their life there, and Soul Secret is left untouched, with Recap poking in the backline. But Only a 1-for-1 trade, but Burning Core can't make that thing. Looks like they might catch out Soul, but Cleanse comes through, and it will be a flank coming through there. Ray Farkey dies into the back of the line, but it will not matter. As top laner of Burning Core falls, Soul is charging forwards. Yuhi getting out with a sliver of HP, and this could be the match with Rascal Jester recovering after what was a pretty disastrous early game.
We had hope. Somehow, some way, we had hope. But the Jesters, as they so often do, get the last laugh. Said that a couple of times this split because they have been oh so impressive to watch. They set themselves up for a very strong finish in this split.
Yeah, a strong finish, but I would argue not a strong start in that game. They look lost. They look confused coming through at the start of that one. And it's, if nothing else, a brilliant sign of life for Burning Core there. But before we take a quick look at that game, guys, or a deeper look, I should say, we will be going to a short break, but don't go anywhere. We'll be back very shortly. We're right back at it.
It's a trapdoor. Who put that there? Lexi, why did you do that?
Look, I'm sorry. I regret nothing. Back up to the LJL. I'm Midnight with Nightmare. Take a closer look at the Burning Core Rascal Jester game that we just witnessed. And I think let's start it off with saying this is one of, if not the best performance we've seen out of Burning Core this split. It was a phenomenal start for this team.
It's not even arguable for this split, right? I mean, you can count. I don't even think I can even count. Well, I guess I could technically count it on my hand, and it'd be like that. It's none this split. They really have struggled. But for them to end out like this, of course we praise them. I think we particularly, of course, praise. I think once did a stellar job. I think Proud did a stellar job of roaming too. You know, those two people that we have had high hopes of before, but haven't necessarily realized it in this split. And then we have to flip around on Rascal Jesters because what the hell happened to get to that point? Where do you really want to start with this though? Because there are two sides of the coin here.
I think my first thing to focus on is the objectives, right? We saw the first dragon, both Rift Tails, all secured by Burning Core, and Rascal Jester never moved to contest any of those objectives. There was no real movement of let's try to do something. There was no rotating Soul and Secret out of that bottom lane when we saw the likes of Proud roaming up to the top half of the map.
Yeah,
Rascal Jester looked like they were just playing on autopilot for the first 10-15 minutes of the game.
And I think the point where I really have an issue with, because I don't mind Rascal Jester saying we don't really want to fight this objective right now because we win at 3 items, at 4 items. I mean, as soon as we saw Sol get the Frozen Heart and then the Last Whisper after that, we thought, okay, Sol can very much solo carry at this point, and he put in some insane damage stats across that game. But if you are not going to fight because you think you win later, don't half-heart it. Don't engage just randomly after the dragon's gone down because you see half of an opportunity. You have to stick towards your game plan. And this is the problem I have with Rascal Jester on the side of this. And of course, credit to Burning Core to arriving to the objective, realizing that was their win conditioning, saying, you come into us, we land hooks, we land everything else, that's the way we win. Rascal Jesters don't play to their playbook. If you win in the late game, play like you mean to get there.
Yeah, it seemed bits of craziness. We're like, oh yeah, they've taken the objective, they've already secured it. They're not really that low because we haven't landed much poke. But let's commit to a fight in close range where Burning Core's composition specializes. Like medium to short range Ash, Rise the machine gun mage of close range. And you're diving in there with your 2 range members, and then you've got your Zoe Ezreal sort of hanging out in the back line. It seems very, very chaotic coming through there. But they did survive what was a pretty rough early game. And then Burning Core did the same thing. They saw, oh, we can go for a fight. And I think the most heartbreaking thing was that play around the Baron where Rayfaki gets Rise ulted into the backline at half health and then just doesn't get to play League of Legends for 30 seconds because he just gets nuked.
Somehow. This isn't the worst Burning Core Rise ultimate I've seen in the last 2 games. Funny you mentioned that one, but no, that was... I can understand the play, I can understand the philosophy of it. You get a flash face breaker, particularly onto Sol, who had just used the E, just used everything to get away from that Graves. Yes, you killed the Ezreal, you feel good about things. Absolutely didn't work out, though. Rest of the team wasn't close enough. Set wasn't quite in position enough either. Doesn't work out. Burning Core, sadly for them, will now have that record-breaking loss streak of 11 losses, although at least there were signs of life. Somehow.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You can look at this game and think, oh, yeah. But there were signs of life, which is brilliant. And then on the other side, Rascal Jester. At the start of this game, I think we made it quite clear that we're sort of judging how Rascal Jester is going to be going into playoffs compared to how DFM versed against Burning Core. And I must say, Rascal Jester, they didn't look like themselves this particular game. The first 15 minutes, I felt like, again, it just felt like autopilot was going on.
Yeah, so... we saw how dominant DFM's early game was against Burning Core. Against Rascal Jesters, we saw how dominant their objective plays were. So it feels like, honestly, going up against, this team which we have touted as, potentially the greatest LJL team of all time, that is the legacy which they have to live up to. That is the expectations that were set for them. The Rascal Jesters have got a lot of work to do between now and that eventual Juggernaut match, because that's going to be, after this game, not something they're favored in.
Yeah, and of course that does mean that with the win under Rascal Jester's belt, that means that tiebreaker scenario is still very on the table. So they can tap against DFM. So it's technically the fight for first still isn't over, because I think DFM have to win their next match.
Well, yes,
if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, if they both have the same record, either both going 0-2, 1-1, or 2-0, and respectively, then of course they will have their 1-on-1 head-to-head. They went into this week on even wings, and you would have a tiebreaker for first place. I'm trying to remember if we've ever had a tiebreak for first place. I don't believe we have. We've had it for second place before, though, however, because we did have that. I believe in summer 2020 we had something at that point. Oh, no. I thought we were going to, and then CGA copped it, and it was really bad. Anyway, top of the table tiebreaker. Sounds fun to me.
Yeah, it should be a party to see how that goes. But our next match, Amira, is something a little bit different. We get a Burning Core again, and yes. I must say I'm actually a lot more excited for this match than I was after witnessing before, because again we saw great signs of Burning Core having some sign of life up against V3. Bit of a different opponent coming in. Has your expectations changed after what we just witnessed at a Burning Core there, or is it still the same?
So first off, we've got the great storyline, of course, the UGO coming in, but and of course we'll cover that a little bit more when we do the pre-game in the next game too. But I'm sat there, I'm like, V3 are going to get a tiebreaker either way, it looks like at the end of the day. A win would get them one versus Axis. I believe a loss gets them one versus the Hawks. This is also a confidence game for them too, but I don't know. I'm looking at them subbing in Yu-Gi-Oh into this mid lane. I think that Burning Core have a route to victory if they play like this.
Well, there's only one way to find out, I suppose, and that will be to get into the fourth game of the night here over at the LJLOU. So, guys, do not go anywhere. Don't touch that X. I can see that. No. Stay right here, guys. The fourth game of the LJLOU, where we have V3 facing off against Burning Core. We'll be kicking off shortly. We'll see you soon.